Next up, we have another incredible panel called Empathy at Scale, Connecting with Prospects in the Digital Age. And because this is all about the human element of selling and connecting with our prospects, we have some fun facts along with these introductions. So I'd like to welcome our panelists for Empathy at Scale. We have Allison McAuliffe, Director of Solutions at Ontic. She co-owns a coffee shop in Dallas, Texas called Little Joy Cafe. So if you're local, you should go find Allison and say hi. We have Vinaya Springer, Senior Sales Engineer Manager at Cisco. Vinaya owns more than 450 sneakers and counting, which tracks with your background there, with your sneaker background. We have Nathan Cowan. He's founder and principal consultant at Talmar Consulting. And Nathan adopted a cat at a truck stop. That's fabulous. Love it. Daniel Kish is a VP of product marketing, and he used to have a top secret security clearance. We wish we knew for what, but I'm sure you can share. And finally, we have 𝐀𝐁𝐎𝐔𝐓, Gutierrez, Head of Platforms Customer Success at Stripe. She is a passionate world traveler, and she just hit countries number 87, 88, and 89 on her latest vacation. Wow. Well, you're in good hands with this group. Allison, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Greer. Hi, everyone. So good to see you again. So we just learned some fun facts, but I want to kind of, build off that. So what's something at the beginning of each call that you do to build connection? And Vinaya, I'm actually going to start with you because your background and your fun fact, is that like an immediate connection right there?
It absolutely is, Allison. And so first and foremost, I want to thank you all. It's a blessing to be able to be here on this call with this esteemed panel. But absolutely, when I join calls, especially with those that do not know me, Allison, the first thing they say is, before let's jump in, Vinaya, the shoes, the background, the mindset, etc. Talk to me about that. Different story for a different time, but of how I came about this background. Actually, it was during the pandemic and just addressing mental health issues, right? I was dealing with being in a new house that hadn't had an office in there just yet. And so I wanted to really make it feel like home and feel like me. But as far as, me and how I bring those to the calls, I do exactly what you just did. Before we talk shop, how are you doing today? How are you doing today? Talk to me about your family. How was your weekend? Before we jump in, I want to be able to meet people with where they are. And so, how are you doing is such a simple question, but it's such a loaded question. And you never really know how people are going to respond back, but it allows you to allow them to feel disarmed. And it also allows you to feel comfortable in dealing with the conversation itself.
100%. I need to get a better background over here. Just blur. So interesting. It's instant. Okay, Nathan, what about you? We have similar backgrounds.
Yeah, no, I was like, people wonder if I'm in an institution or something like that with the bare background. For me, a lot of what I do is make sure that I state why we're there and what I understand about what the customer or prospect is looking for, and then really check in with them about whether that still holds true. I think a lot of empathy and a lot of way of connection is actually making sure that your customers and prospects are not just feel heard, but are actually heard, and giving them evidence that you've heard them and are still looking to make sure they get the most out of any conversation or any demo is actually one of the best ways that I think I build connection and really build that trust.
We also got a chat that said you need to put a picture of your cat as your background.
Well, if I was at my home office, the cat would be like walking across me as I work.
Yana, what about you? How do you build connection just right off the bat?
Yeah, so I have a very similar approach to Vinaya. So my Zoom backgrounds are all pictures I've taken from my vacation. The one behind me right now is the summit of Mount Fuji in Japan. But I also I want to make sure that I'm establishing that human connection. So I do always ask how you're doing, or if we're coming off a weekend or a holiday, I'll ask about that, engage in that. It just allows you to kind of get folks to get comfortable, and as Vinaya said, kind of to start building that trust, especially if it's a new relationship that you're starting off.
I love that. That background is gorgeous. That's the first
Yes.
thing I looked at too. It's beautiful. Daniel, what about you? You have some fun stuff going on back there.
Sure. Yeah. I like, first of all, it's so fun to hear all these ideas. There are a lot of really cool things. The things that work for me are two. One is I like to set the table. And when I set the table, I think it's helpful to say, like, these are the ground rules of, like, I want to show up transparently today. And the second thing is, like, when you show up transparently, this is called the bartering technique, is like, actually do something transparent, demonstrate that. And I think, like, within the first 30 seconds, it's easy to be like, I want to say something very transparent, and then say the thing. And there is instant trust that you can kind of communicate not only with how you operate and how you act, but then how you speak. And so I kind of like this idea of, like, set some ground rules, like, I'm going to be transparent, and then show that in reality within the first 5 minutes of the phone call. And there's a lot that you can do to kind of, like, build that very quickly. So that's one little tip that I use.
I love that. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to be transparent. I have a sick kid home. So if you hear her or you see her, we're all human. Here we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good luck.
All right. So perfect timing. What we're talking about today, we're talking about empathy, right? And how we can bring that to our customers and our prospects and our work. So Nathan, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah.
What do you think is the value of being empathetic and the value of empathy in the workplace?
Yeah, well, I think they're two different questions, right? So when we think about empathy, my initial reaction is what it means to be a human and what values I want to have. And while that's still the same in the workplace, there are different contexts to it, right? So when we think about empathy, there's certainly what we want to be as people interacting with other people. But there's a really capitalistic nature to it in business, which is, to me, I don't think deals or customer relationships are won on product and price. I think oftentimes they're your ability to match what the product does to what the customer feels that they need. And so empathy, to me, in a business context, is about truly understanding, right? It is not just asking questions like a really bad TV lawyer who is trying to lead somebody to the answer that you want. It's actually asking questions that you might not want to know the answers to, right? It is really trying to understand not just what they do, but what's the impact to them as in their role as a company. And I think that's really the value of empathy, is it allows you to understand where the customer is emanating or operating from, and then adjust what you're doing to address those things. And I think that's the real value in business context.
I love that. I love that. So when you think about empathy at scale, Donna, what does that mean to you?
That's a great question, Allison. I think, and I agree with so much of what Nathan said. I think doing it at scale is not, doesn't mean becoming robotic and you have this blueprint that you completely just replicate. It's being able to understand what's the kind of framework that you can kind of apply, and how are you going to adjust that? So I think you always have a game plan when you're trying to engage with the customer. So, like, what are the leading questions that are going to get me the answers that I need? Like, that's going to lead me to that understanding, right? So you lead from that user's perspective. That's what you do at scale, but you need to understand where you're going to tweak to really drive the insight of your kind of customer. And that's where, to Nathan's point, we're going to get to that understanding.
Ooh, I love a good framework. I love having the framework for empathy. I've never thought about it like that. Does anyone have an example where you have, like, a true example of genuine empathy and how it kind of changed your relationship? Or maybe you were having kind of a awkward conversation, or Nathan, to your point, asking things they didn't really want to answer or talk about, and how you used empathy to kind of reframe that situation.
So I'll
Yeah,
jump
I mean,
in real
Yeah.
quick, and then
please.
Nathan, definitely, for sure. So from an example perspective, I love what Nathan did, and then also Yana. If anybody has read the Let Them book by Mel Robbins, there's a part in there that talks about, so Allison, you talk about frame of reference. And frame of reference is something that can be applicable, whether it's business related, personal, or all the above. Frame of reference doesn't have a context as to when you can use it or how you can use it, because it's applicable across the board. So when you're talking about, Nathan, in regards to setting the tone, right, and understanding from the perspective of a prospect, in my world, that would be a customer, that could be a partner, or that could be just an individual person on my team. Understanding where they're coming from and why they're feeling how they're feeling in regards to a specific solution, and why they are very, in this instance, hell bent on going in this direction. There's history that's probably there. There's relationships that are probably there. I work in tech sales. Relationships is king and queen around here. And so if I don't truly understand the nature of the relationship and who they're working with and why they're working with them and why they're positioning it, then it does become to what Nathan and Yana talked about, a me versus them type of conversation versus me putting a framework, Allison, as you just mentioned, around such. So for me, I have a customer scenario. Customer scenario is XYZ customer because I don't want to use the name on here, but the customer had a 10-year relationship with a competitor. So irregardless of how great or how awesome our products were, they were still very hell bent on regards to that product because of the prior relationship. Framing it in that regard, what I did with my team was did some research. Hey, who do we know on the customer side that can influence? Because there's ways to be able to skin a cat in regards to sell, and everything comes down to relationship and finding that inlet. Once we found that inlet, it wasn't going to be easy and it wasn't going to be something that was going to be done overnight. It took time. Meeting them where they are, right? Frame of reference is understanding part of that, as Allison, meeting them where they are. So in this 10-year period of time, this customer and this competitor have attended ball games together, baseball games, football games. They're in each other's lives from a family perspective. So how can we build that genuine relationship and connection so they understand that we're not just pushy salespeople, but we generally have the best frame of thought in mind for that customer. Long story cut short, over time, we were able to build that relationship the same way the competitor has. And now we have an equal seat at the table in regards to the decisions that are made from a sales perspective. Those same individuals are now going to football games, go Commanders and go Ravens, because I sit in between both places. And it just works best for everybody when it's not just focusing on just the sell and the technology, but more about the person behind who's making that decision.
2 points there. Thank you for sharing. I have friends that got the let them tattooed on their arm. And I was like, oh, we're going to the next level. And I also appreciated the queen call out, king and queen. So thank you so much.
Okay.
Daniel, kind of same question for you. Do you have an example where showing that genuine empathy changed a prospect or maybe the deal or a relationship?
Sure. I can actually think back to some time at Gong. When I think about, I heard some really interesting ideas from everybody. The thing that I think about with why empathy matters is empathy is how you win. Nathan talked about you might not have the most superior product. You might not even have the best price. How do you win? Go look at the MarTech guide of 5,000 software companies out there and ask everybody to like name all the vendors. And you're like, it's a crowded sea. How do I win? I win by showing up as a person. And I win by showing up as somebody who has moral fiber and is honest. And I think a good example of that from Gong is we were negotiating really hard on a deal and it became very contentious over the course of time, very competitive dynamic. And eventually the client said, hey, like you promised this, like after all these back and forths, you promised X. And, there was some triangulation between product says something, CS says something, sales says another thing. And eventually our CEO got involved and he said, because we had the power of Gong, we actually went back and found the conversation where we did promise something. And a lot of times, a CEO might say, yeah, I know, we can't do that. We got to win the deal. We got to tank the price. We got to go. And having moral fiber and showing up as an empathetic leader, an empathetic sales team, and somebody who is empathetic with customers and prospects means sometimes owning it and saying, hey, we messed up. That's on us. We're going to take the hit. We're going to do the extra R&D and product. We are going to take the drop on the price, and we're going to still do something that feels right because we had moral fiber about that decision. And so when I think about the value of showing up with empathy, it's business value with differentiation, and it's showing up differently than your competitors who otherwise might not take those hard choices and do things that might hurt the business a little bit in order to preserve long-term gain.
It's almost like the sister of empathy is authenticity too. Like they have to go hand in hand or else it's like, what's the point?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'd argue you can't be authentic if you don't understand the customer, which is I think what Daniel's really saying is if you want to show up authentically, then you have to have empathy for where that that individual customer and the company's emanating from.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so we're seeing some chats in here about AI. Hot topic. So we're going to go ahead and pivot to AI in the time, or empathy in the time of AI. So with all this progress and all the things we keep hearing about AI and automating processes and automating empathy, I've heard on LinkedIn the other day, I was like, oh no. Where do you draw the line between being helpful with your automation and feeling robotic? Who would like to take this one? If you've had any real world experiences, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I'm happy to share. I mean, so one is the caveat is I just turned 50, and both my teenage daughters say that I am way too old to understand AI. So take it with a grain of salt. But as I'm talking to customers, one of the things that I'm really trying to reframe is we're using the concept of artificial intelligence, which means it's just going to create intelligence on its own, and it's not. It's augmented. And so if you're using AI as a hey, I don't know how to connect with customers, or I don't know what our value proposition is. An LLM is not going to solve that problem for you. And forgive my language, but there is an element of like shit in and shit out. Like if you don't have a good understanding of the customer and you put shit into an LLM, you're going to get shitty messaging coming out of it, right? And so I think when you start to think about empathy as it relates to AI, it's really about how do you augment what you understand about customers. And when you think about it, how do you focus on outcomes that you deliver, right? Versus how you go about doing it. And I think what AI often does is it's antiseptic and says, well, here's our product and here's what we do. And a lot of the messaging will come that way. It doesn't talk about what your world is going to look like without it. If I'm at a company who is solving for sales tracking, as an example, right? Like data, we can talk about all the things that it does, but if we don't talk about how your business is better or how your individual job is better at the end of that, then it won't really land. And I think that's what the real challenge is as an individual seller, as a corporate marketer, as a company, is are you using AI to better understand what the impacts are of customers, or are you just using it to list off a bunch of and automate a bunch of the features that you have?
One of the things that you said in that, Nathan, sorry,
yeah.
Allison, but one of the things that you continue to use, Nathan, was the word you, right? Which is I, which is we, which is the human aspect in all of this. When we look at it from the lens of AI, AI is great, it's awesome, but AI is also very scary. And when you are talking to prospects, individuals, your team, your customers, your partners, we cannot miss out on the fact that everybody is looking at AI from a different lens. And so when we talk to our customers and when we talk to our partners, we don't forget the you, the slash, the I, the slash, the we in every conversation. What we're talking about is, hey, how are you using AI in your everyday life? Remove the fact that this is a business meeting. How are you as an individual using AI in every aspect of your life, right? Are you using the different tools that are out there to augment certain situations? Are you using the tools or the chatbots to be able to procreate appropriate emails and responses to such? So the I, the we, and the they in that is extremely important. I always use myself as an example when I'm talking to customers. I work for a technology company. I'm very excited about AI. I'm a human being at the end of the day. I'm also very scared in regards to it because AI is moving so fast, it's moving so quick. And not everyone is open to change, right? Especially change that is going to be different, that is new, and you're not too sure about what the end goal is going to be. From a technical perspective, because I'm in technical sales, I'm excited about it, right? I've seen the different waves that we've gone through from 2000 with the introduction of the internet, 10 years later to the introduction of cloud, 10 years later plus to the introduction of AI. And we have, as a people, have evolved, we have grown, we have seen technological advances that advanced us as a people, how we work, how we live, and how we play. AI is, in my regard, no different than those other technological advancements, but this is going to require us to not forget the human interaction and empathy in all of this. We are seeing massive things happen in the industry, massive layoffs. I remember Chris and I had this discussion in regards to multi-generations entering into the workforce all at the same time. We have geopolitical situations that are happening, environmental situations are happening. There is a lot of shit, to Nathan's point, happening in our world. And AI can help us, but AI is also not going to solve for the things that are happening in this world. And that is where the human aspect comes into this. So I just wanted to chime in real quick on that, Allison, because it's something that I literally was just talking about with a customer last week over dinner. And it was refreshing to hear from their perspective that even though they are this VP of XYZ, they are still dealing with the same thing within their own company and in their own lives.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I was talking to Jeff Margulies. He's at ServiceNow the other day, and I was like, at the end of the day, as long as the buyer is still a human and not AI, they're still going to need to be sold to by a human.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yana, I'd love to hear your perspective on AI and empathy.
Yeah. AI is a starting point. It always needs that human overlay, I think, what you just pointed out, Allison. I look at an AI can be just get wrong answers. I look at our internal LLMs. I look at you need that kind of human kind of critical thinking element, right? Because to what Nathan and Maya had pointed out, like what you put into it doesn't mean it's going to spit out the right answer. It the way we train our models, it's is not always kind of going to result in kind of in good answers, honestly. And there are tons of examples out there like that. And so I think you always need that kind of that human overlay that's going to do the interpretation, that's going to kind of look at it with a critical eye. Is this right? I look at there's an example I'm thinking about just on internal LLMs when we have reams and reams and reams of documents that Stripe produces, right, for our users as they're working with our software. And our internal LLMs can sometimes use those docs, and it's going to produce an answer. I'm like, is that sometimes that answer is mostly right? Sometimes it can be a little bit wrong, right? And so you always need that human element to really kind of analyze kind of what's being spit out and then translate it, right? Because how are you going to translate it in a way that your customer is going to really understand? AI can't do that. They don't know what your customer's motivations. They don't know where they're coming from. They don't know their background, and so you really still need that human who can produce that empathy. I have not yet seen an AI model that can produce empathy or an AI system that can communicate with empathy.
Oh, I love that. Okay, we're going to do one more around this because we only have 7 minutes left, y'all. Like this is flying through. Daniel, what's one of the biggest mistakes you've seen teams make when trying to automate this empathetic approach? And kind of what we're talking about, it doesn't really seem like you can, but have you seen an example and where it didn't work?
Yeah, I would say on the Venn diagram of AI, automation, and empathy, and where that kind of like intersects in the middle, one of the number one mistakes that I see people make is not defining what accuracy looks like. Perfect example. We use AI for lots of things, but nobody, like a lot of them are judgment tasks, like write me a better email, structure a potential blog post for me. And you got to write down what good looks like first in the sense of accuracy. Like, what does accuracy, the definition of it, mean? Does it mean that I filled out 100% of a spreadsheet? Or does it mean that I went through and I spot checked 99 out of the 100 cells in the spreadsheet? Because I think until we start holding AI accountable, we can't necessarily hold ourselves accountable. And this, to me, is the essence of watching humans work better with AI together. I got some bad news for a lot of people. AI is going to eat 50% of everybody's job on this call. Gone. I hope it doesn't eat 50% of the jobs of the people on this call, but it will definitely eat 50% of your job. The question is, how do I then level up on top of that and add empathy, authenticity, and good judgment in order to take advantage of AI to be better than I used to be? We are like, there was the car that came in, horse and buggies, and it's going to be the same thing with AI for our jobs. And so until we start getting really good at defining accuracy for these tools, holding it accountable, and then holding ourselves accountable last to become better, I have found that those are the things that lead to success. So I use spreadsheets as a very simple example, but I think that that's a perfect one where like you throw it in the LLM, you say, populate it with all of the marketing and positioning that I need. And then I got to go and read through. The challenge that a lot of us have is you generate something and you're like, let's be honest, do you really scrub 100% of the article, or are you reading like maybe 20%? Right? Like we could all look in the mirror and be like, maybe it's 30%. And so I think like holding ourselves accountable means being really in the weeds in the early days of AI right now to get better.
Accuracy. That's such a good point to check all of ourselves when we're using AI. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay. I have a question for you, Nathan.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do a round robin to close us out. What is one simple change any team could make tomorrow to be more empathetic?
Well, I mean, I think the first is building a culture that is starting every customer interaction by naming the problem or the opportunity from the customer's point of view, not yours. I just think that when we're talking about empathy, it is, do you understand the problem and the impact of the customer, and then more importantly what they're looking for and what the benefit of that would be. If you start every conversation today with that point of view and that becomes your culture, I can guarantee you're going to see both customer retention and revenue go up as a result of it.
Ooh, love that. Okay, so we're gonna, last question for everyone, just in your own point of view. Why is empathy more important now than ever? We've talked about a lot of it, but we can just round us out. Nathan, right back to you. Do you want to finish
Yeah.
us off?
I mean, for me, I think it's because buyers are overwhelmed. I really do. I mean, I think they're
I'm
bombarded.
overwhelmed.
I totally, yes, well, yeah, absolutely. Like, but they're like bombarded with like automation and content. And Daniel brought up a great point of like now they're trying to learn a new skill because 50% of their job is going to be taken by AI. Like they have all of that, and I just think empathy is how you cut through that noise. I really do. I think that's why it's so important, is that in a world of automation, in a world of a lot of noise, the one where you're able to understand and connect is what will allow you to stand out. And I think that's why it's so important.
Yana, what about you? Why is it so important now more than ever?
I think we're living in a time where there's lack of trust, don't know what to believe, even in data that's being delivered. And so you want to know that you're working with someone across the table that kind of understands you, that's actually going to help kind of you navigate this. And is coming from a place that of kind of your perspective that makes it, and so they know, so you become the person they trust and helping them navigate that noise.
Beautiful. Thank you. Benea.
Yeah. So I love what Nathan and Yana said. What I will chime in here and say is that empathy has no color, it has no race, it has no gender, it has no ageism built into it. Empathy is something that will last longer than any of us on this call will be around for, right? Empathy doesn't cost much, but it does require you to want to do it. It requires you to weave it into your daily lives, into your work, and how you are operating. And so while Nathan and Yana gave it from a business perspective, I'll just say empathy is required in life in general. And if we keep that in our back pocket and we keep that in our reach, then it'll be applicable, regardless if it's with a prospect, a customer, a partner, our sick children at home. Empathy just it has no context to it, but it is something that we all have to want to do and not feel like we have to do it.
I love too that there's no cost. It's like, why would
Yes.
it be not? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Daniel, last one. Why is it so important now more than ever?
That was beautiful. I think if you do everything Vinaya just said, empathy, differentiate, and if you differentiate, you win. Empathy is how you win.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank everyone so much. Thank you for your time, this brilliant panel. My heart is filled for the rest of the day. Oh, thank you so much. And I think we're just going to be put into the next panel. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. What a great panel talking about empathy, and putting people first is really at the heart of doing great business. So thank you all for that. It was really insightful.